Thank you. So I'm going to start off, I'll just create a fictitious user here, trying to figure out how do you take content that you have and get it out on social media. There's a lot of different decisions you want to make. The biggest one that I'm going to address here is the production value. There's many ways to get out to Facebook or to get out to YouTube, and many reasons for doing it. But there are a lot of trade-offs along the way, depending on your budget, depending on what production value you actually need or want to actually produce for your content. So I'm going to walk through a couple of the decisions about different equipment you might have and different features of different equipment that might make it easier or more portable or more professional looking. So we'll walk through that, whether you're looking to try to decide, do I need a different camera? Do I need a dedicated encoder? We'll talk about some of these different equipment options and what the values they bring to your production are and what trade-offs they might present. So the first one that everybody's familiar with is streaming from your phone. And it is obviously, geez, that's really dark. It is obviously the easiest, most portable, simple way to go. So if you're going to be out skiing with buddies and you want to stream live and show somebody going down the side of a cliff, you're not going to bring a bunch of production gear. You're not going to have a bunch of stuff with you. Then your phone is really all you've got, right? A phone or a tablet or something ultra portable. And when you look, this is darker than it was on my screen, but basically this is a person playing guitar. And you can see that this was done with a tablet, and the problem with the tablet is you don't have a lot of control over exposure. You don't have a lot of control over the microphone and how that audio is being captured. And there's a real trade-off between getting close enough to the person that the microphone works well and blocks out some of the ambient noise, and pulling the camera away to a kind of pleasing perspective that's flattering for your subject. So one of the things that the phone or the tablet doesn't do well is you're holding it at kind of arm's length at best, and you're trying to produce something, and you have very little control over the production value. It's, as I said, for portability, where you can't take other gear around, then by all means the phone or the tablet is the way to go. But there are a lot of trade-offs. The poor light performance of these kind of cameras, you're going to see that over and over again. If you log on to Facebook or YouTube and you just look through some of the live streams, a lot of them look like this. It's very hard to even see what's going on in the stream because they're not in a controlled environment where they have lighting, they have different cameras and microphones all separated out. So it works in a pinch, but it certainly isn't kind of the pro AV way to bring your stream to your users. So I mentioned a few of these. I mean, the ability to have Wi-Fi and LTE all built in and everything, it's super handy. But on YouTube, for example, you need 1,000 subscribers to even be able to go live from your phone or directly from the app. So there are some limitations as well. I'm going to move on. One of the big kind of drawbacks to this whole approach is interactivity with the audience as well. When you're using your phone to do that live streaming, it's very hard to also be using your phone or some other device at the same time to interact with your audience, see the comments that they're putting forward or the questions that they're posing as you're actually broadcasting your content. So one of the first things you can do is move and separate your webcam and your laptop. It's not a perfect solution, but it does allow you some of that interactivity in that you can see some of the comments coming by. You can have multiple windows open. But the problem with the webcam that sits inside your laptop, obviously, is it's got a very poor angle. It's very hard to position a laptop in a nice way that you can with a camera on a tripod. So you get kind of these similar kinds of things with a phone where you've got kind of an unflattering angle. And again, your microphone in your laptop makes you want to be very close to it, but bringing the camera right up in your face is not the most flattering perspective. So one of the things you're going to want to do as you up the video production quality of what you're putting out on social media is to be able to separate those two things. You want to separate the microphone and the camera as much as possible so that you can optimize for each of those. And you can do that with a laptop. And I'm going to talk about that next when we add a microphone. One of the cons of the laptop, as I mentioned, is it's doing the encoding itself. So that's, it's possible, it's feasible. It doesn't always do the best job of that. And if you're starting to use your laptop for other things, or there's something on your laptop that you want to show as part of the content, it becomes very tricky to manage that. So we'll talk about going to a dedicated encoder or other solutions for that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was separating the camera from the microphone and getting an external mic. And if you've looked at any of the kind of setups that you see in a typical studio or those kind of things, usually the microphone is on a boom and it's very close to the talent. So you want that microphone very close so that it's miking and it has a very special kind of miking pattern. You're not trying to pick up everything in the room, you're trying to pick up only what the actors are saying or what the people are saying. So the idea is to try to get the mic as close to them as possible, but you want the camera positioned back from the talent in order to get a flattering perspective and to not be right up in their face as they're actually trying to do their presentation. So separating out, getting away from a laptop or a phone and being able to separate that microphone from the camera itself is a good first step. You get much better audio quality. It's especially good for noisy environments. So if you're at, like, say, a trade show like this one and you're out on the floor trying to do something live, if you tried to do that from a phone or this, you're picking up all of the ambient noise that's ringing off the walls and off the ceiling. You need to move to a dedicated microphone and get that off. Similarly, you want to, laptop is not the most handy thing to use as a camera in that situation. And of course, the laptop is still doing the encoding in this setting, so that's not ideal. The next step is to really get an external camera, and what that allows you to do is place the camera far back from the talent to give them space, but also then you can zoom in optically. So you're not trying to get right up in their face with a tablet or with a laptop or using a webcam. Using a more professional camera allows you to get a proper perspective, and it also allows you a lot of manual settings. So you don't rely on your webcam or your phone to automatically focus and all this kind of thing. Once you move to a separate camera, you have a lot more control over the white balance, over the exposure, over the focus. So things aren't moving and changing all the time and distracting people as they're trying to watch your content. Instead, what they see is the camera trying to adjust to focus as people move, or your camera adjusting to exposure as sunlight changes. It's much better once you move to a secondary camera to be able to lock that down. And it's fairly easy to do that, and it still allows you the option either, as we show here, with a mic right on the camera, or you can separate that mic again. So really separating out the camera from the mic is a good idea. And it's very easily done with a simple video grabber or capture card to be able to bring that camera into your laptop if that's still what you're using. If you want to get to a dedicated encoder, there are a lot of advantages to doing that. I'm going to talk about a few of those. We have a product, and it's the one that we're going to give away at the end of the show. It's actually a dedicated streamer, and the idea is that you plug your camera into that, you plug your microphone in, and it separates those two. But more than that, it provides the feedback on a local monitor. So you can set up a monitor, you can see what the image is that you're broadcasting out, and it will automatically collect for you all of the likes, all of the comments, all of the feedback that's coming back from your audience so that you can see them and you can react to them. So if people are asking questions in the middle of a presentation, you can respond to that. You can see what's going on. You can see how many people are watching the stream. And you're able to be able to pretty much do this as a one-person operation the same way you would have done with your phone, but it's going to look a lot better getting that external camera and having that. And one of the other key features of this kind of product is that it's integrated with the API of Facebook or YouTube or whatever platform you're going to. And the idea there is that you need not share credentials. So if I was setting up something to stream to your Facebook page, the way these kind of devices work, because they're integrated with the API, you flip on the switch, it'll give you a code. If I'm there with the cameras and the streaming, I can give you that code and you log into your page with your credentials and just enter that code, which connects the device automatically to your Facebook page or your YouTube event or whatever it is you're doing. And it allows someone to stream to your page because you're using that code. And that code is just a temporary token. So rather than you giving me your credentials and me setting up the streaming to your page, instead I just turn this device on, it goes and fetches a code from either Facebook or YouTube, and that code can then be used by anyone to log into their page or their YouTube event, and it will connect and pair the streaming device directly with it. So there's some advantages to going to a dedicated streamer, aside from just separating the camera and the mic, but also getting the interaction over the API of all the comments going on and being able to use these temporary code tokens to do the pairing and the connection. Once you get beyond sort of the simple streaming, it's still a one camera kind of application where there's, on these kind of products, there tends to be one input. So usually that's your camera and you plug it in and you're pointing that at the talent or at yourself and you're doing your presentation. It works really well. So at this point you've got good audio because you've separated that mic out. You've got good video because you're using a proper camera and you can get a nice perspective and use optical zoom. But you're still a one camera shoot. So if you're doing a 1 hour presentation and all people see is that one shot framed the same way, that can get a little tedious. So the next step to kind of up your production level is to introduce multiple cameras and do some switching. Or if you wanted to do more than just a camera, you want to bring in some content that's playing on your laptop, or you want to show an app that's running on your iPad. If you want to bring that into your presentation, then having one port doesn't allow that, and that's where you would typically introduce something like a simple HDMI switcher into the same mix. So you can still use the dedicated encoder, but in front of it you're placing an HDMI switch, and then you're putting your multiple cameras or your laptop or whatever else it is you want to show in that presentation into that switcher. And that allows you then just to switch between sources and create something that could be picture-in-picture or a camera only or content from your laptop, and allows the presentation to be that much more dynamic. So by building up these little pieces, you can add to your production value as you see fit and use it when you need to. There's certainly a lot of content for which you don't need multiple cameras or you don't need a laptop to be showing, and a simple one camera shoot is all you want. But when you do need to up that production level and keep it interesting, this is a great way to do it. You just throw a switcher in front and then you're able to switch between multiple sources dynamically. So I talked about the pros of that. I think one of the cons is, or one of the caveats here is, it's got to be we say fancy, but it's got to be a pretty decent switch. A lot of the HDMI switchers out there will not have a nice clean switch between sources. So if you are going to go this route and you want to put a switcher in front of your encoder, do make sure that it's got a nice clean switch from frame to frame, or else you might be sending out some kind of garbage in between your switches, and that sometimes makes your audience think that that's something going on their side rather than on the production end. So you want to keep that as clean as possible. And of course, having all of these elements does introduce more complexity a little bit and more points for failure. So sort of the next step from here, if this is where you're going into these multiple camera shoots and being able to dynamically switch on the fly, is there are kind of all-in-one production systems. Epiphan has one we call Pearl 2, and the idea is that you can bring in multiple cameras, you can monitor and do your switching either on a tablet or directly on the device itself. You can be recording your ISOs individually, so each of your sources can be recorded individually, as well as that program that you're creating can be streamed. It can be streamed out to multiple platforms simultaneously, which is a question we get asked a lot, is can I stream to YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, and my corporate network all at the same time? So some of these more professional devices, when you step up to them, they have that capability to take your program out and stream it at multiple bit rates. You'll notice right now Facebook is recommending 720p at about 3 megabits as the ideal kind of uplink. Whereas YouTube, you can go all the way to 4K if you like, if you have the bandwidth to do that. So some of these more professional systems will allow you to encode that content at different bit rates and at different resolutions, which gives you a lot more flexibility to tailor it for the platform that you're on. So that's kind of a couple reasons why you might step up. It's certainly a more costly option, but it takes a lot of that multiple components of an HDMI switcher and a dedicated encoder and all of these extra pieces. If you're doing this often, then these kind of highly integrated boxes make things very, very simple and allow you to record directly on the box as well as push live out. So in some cases, people will go through kind of a progression. They'll start with something that's very simple like their phone, and then the first thing they'll do is add maybe a microphone and a laptop, And they'll go through the progression as I've kind of laid it out here as they up the production value. But that's not to say that the end all and be all is that professional production system. That only works in cases where you can afford from a budget point of view, but also from a weight and kind of portability point of view. You can afford to carry that gear around, multiple external cameras and all this kind of stuff. So really what we see is people kind of using each of these setups depending on what it is they're trying to accomplish. And the only kind of golden rule we've seen is where you can separate the microphone from the camera. That's the ideal. There's many ways to do that, but whenever you're forced into having the microphone and the camera in one spot, it really causes you to compromise one or the other, and sometimes both. So you get average looking video and average or worse audio because you're taking a very, very simple solution that's all integrated. It's very handy, and it works great if you're in a very remote location. But otherwise, generally, people try to make sure that they separate that camera from the microphone and place them each in their ideal spot to get better production. And then, as I said, if you're into multi-camera shooting, then your presentations can be that much more dynamic and interesting for the endpoint, but that requires more gear and usually someone to do that production for you. So it's pretty tough as a person doing the presentation to also be doing that dynamic switching and seeing the comments coming back. So typically what we see as people move from a simple one camera shoot into multi-camera shoot, then they're also having somebody help them produce that content, so they're not sitting there doing it themselves. So there are different reasons why you might do each of these in different scenarios, but that kind of hopefully gives you an idea of the various gear and some of the trade-offs from going from one to the other. Anyone have any questions on any of that?
We have some questions for David about integrating streams, integrating comments here.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about the code that you were mentioning for that
Yes.
little box. Like, how does it work? Do you know how it works with Facebook? Like, where do you enter that code and how?
Yeah, I can describe that a little bit more. So when you first boot up the box and you connect in, it will go to Facebook through the Facebook API automatically, and it will get a code and it'll display it on the front. What you do is then once you're logged into your Facebook account, either on your phone or any other device, then you go to Facebook/devices and you just enter that code. And as soon as you enter that code, because you're already logged into your Facebook account, it will then pair that device with your account and it will start the stream to your timeline immediately. These kind of devices can then, once they're paired, usually you can just start them up again and stream back to that same service if you want. So you need not pair it every single time, or you can program it so that once you turn it off, the pairing stops and then you repair again the next time to either same account or a different account.
We have one last question right here.
Sure.
Do any of the devices support multiple CDN connection or streams to multiple platforms?
Yes, some of them do. This one doesn't, but if I go back, I don't know if I can. So this device, which we have, it's called Pearl 2, it will support going to multiple platforms at the same time. They can be internal corporate LANs, they can be CDNs, they can be social media platforms. So there is a mix out there, and you do need to kind of look at what the product offers. The biggest caveat, though, is you need the bandwidth to be able to get from wherever you are up to, if you're going to Facebook and to YouTube and to Periscope, you need 3 times the bandwidth that you would need if you were going to one of those. So that tends to be the thing that limits you most, is if you're encoding out at 4 megabits or something, you'll need 12 to get to 3 of those platforms. There is an alternative. There are a couple alternatives where you can go to a relay point. So you go up once, and there are services that can then relay that to multiple services for you. In a lot of cases, you'll pay for that service. But the big advantage is you only need 1 time the bandwidth to get out of there, and they'll do some transcoding. If you go up at 1080, but you need to get to Facebook at 720, they'll re-encode and transcode that for you down to 720. So there are services to get around that, but there are certainly boxes, if you have the bandwidth, that you can go right out of the box without paying a service fee and get to multiple platforms at the same time.
Okay, applause for David Kirk of Epiphan. Great job.